Ready for a deep dive into some seriously powerful concepts? We're talking supernatural abilities today with Dr. Roy E. Richmond's book, Mastering Your Supernaturalness.
Oh, I love this book. It's got such a unique blend of biblical ideas and, metaphysical principles.
Right. He doesn't shy away from the big stuff. Like right off the bat, he throws out this idea that we're not just human, but visible spirit.
Yeah, visible spirit. It's a pretty bold statement, right?
Yeah.
But it's so central to his whole approach.
It is. So help me wrap my head around this. Visible spirit. What does that even mean for regular people going about their day?
Well, for Dr. Richmond, it all starts with this idea. We're not just, separate, limited beings. We're reflections, like emanations of the divine.
Okay, so we carry a spark of something bigger within us.
Exactly. And it's that connection, that inner spark, that gives us access to abilities that might seem, supernatural to us.
So less about bending spoons with our minds and more about tapping into a power that's already there.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the source of our true potential. Dr. Richmond actually lays out a 6-step process for mastering this power. And it all begins with awareness, recognizing that inner essence, that visible spirit within us.
Okay, so self-discovery is step one. But he doesn't just leave us hanging with vague self-help stuff, does he?
Oh, no, not at all. Dr. Richmond gets surprisingly specific, actually, especially when he brings in the teachings of Jesus.
Okay, how does Jesus fit into all of this?
Well, he points out that, the things Jesus did, the healings and miracles, Dr. Richmond says, those weren't unique to Jesus.
Oh, wow.
He's saying that Jesus was demonstrating what's possible for all of us when we tap into that same divine source.
That's a pretty radical idea. So how do we even begin to access that kind of power?
Well, Dr. Richmond talks about things like meditation, prayer practices that help us connect with that inner divinity. But he also stresses the importance of aligning ourselves with what he calls divine principles.
Divine principles, what are those exactly?
Think, love, compassion, integrity. These aren't just about being a good person, though that's important too. He sees them as energetic pathways to connect with that divine source.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about aligning our actions and our core being with these principles.
Yes. It's about becoming more aligned with our true nature, that visible spirit within.
It's starting to sound a bit less like woo-woo and a lot more practical.
Right. But it's not always easy. Dr. Richmond gets into that too,
Yeah.
He connects this idea of visible spirit to a passage from Romans, actually, Romans 13.
Okay.
It's where it talks about blasphemy against the spirit.
Ooh, blasphemy against the spirit. That sounds pretty intense.
It does, right.
Yeah.
But he's not talking about traditional, religious dogma here.
Oh, okay. Good to know. What does he mean by blasphemy against the spirit then?
It's about the ways we reject our own divine nature. All the ways we ignore our intuition, dismiss those gut feelings.
Like self-sabotage?
Exactly. When we get stuck in limiting beliefs or let fear run the show, we're essentially turning away from that inner spark.
It's like we're cutting ourselves off from the source of our own power.
That's a great way to put it. And that's actually where Dr. Richmond brings in this fascinating element, a Christmas message.
A Christmas message? Where did that come from?
It's from an unnamed master teacher in the Far East. It dates back to December 25th, 1894. And it talks about this divine illumination that's accessible to everyone.
Divine illumination. Okay, I'm intrigued. How does this Christmas message tie into everything else?
Well, this message, it emphasizes that we're not just born on, our birthdays. It's saying there's also this birth of divine illumination within each of us. It talks about the potential to access the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient one, but within ourselves.
So it's like saying we each have this wellspring of wisdom and power inside us, just waiting to be tapped.
Exactly. And that connects so beautifully with Dr. Richmond's concept of visible spirit. He's saying this isn't just some abstract idea. This power, this divine essence is within you, within me, within everyone.
So we've got this divine illumination within us, this incredible power, but we often get in our own way, don't we? We're afraid to tap into it or maybe even share it with the world.
Absolutely. It's we've been given this amazing gift, but we're scared to take it out of the box. And Dr. Richmond, he really emphasizes this idea of sharing. He actually says that, holding on to these divine ideas, these insights we get, can actually block our growth.
Oh, interesting. So it's not enough to just have the awareness. We have to actually do something with it.
Exactly. It's in the sharing and the expressing that we truly step into our power. It's like, that saying, use it or lose it.
Right, like a muscle we need to exercise.
Exactly. And Dr. Richmond connects this idea to something very powerful, our words. He even goes so far as to say that the tongue, it's like a sharp sword.
Wow, that's a powerful image. He's definitely not talking about just making small talk at a party here.
No, not at all. He's saying that our words have incredible power to harm, to heal, to uplift, or to tear down. And he urges us to be mindful of the energy we're putting out into the world through what we say.
It's making me very aware of that, like, not so nice comment I made to my partner this morning. But seriously, he's talking about taking responsibility for the energy we bring into our interactions.
Yes. And again, it goes back to aligning with that visible spirit,
Right.
with those divine principles. When we speak from a place of love, compassion, integrity, our words, they become instruments of healing. They can uplift and inspire those around us.
So it's about being intentional with our words, recognizing that they have ripple effects. Speaking of energy, he also talks about this idea of spiritual theft. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Is this idea that sometimes we can be robbed of our spiritual understanding, not by an actual thief, but by ideas, by teachings that sound good on the surface.
But they lead us astray.
Exactly. They might steer us away from our own inner truth, our own visible spirit.
So it's about being discerning, questioning what we're taking in, making sure it resonates with our own inner knowing.
Yes. Cultivating that connection with our intuition, that inner compass, is crucial. It helps us decipher what's truly nourishing for our souls.
That makes a lot of sense. It's easy to get caught up in charismatic personalities or like really convincing arguments, but it's so important to check in with ourselves and ask, does this ring true for me?
I love that. Does this ring true for me? That's such a powerful question. And that's actually where, Dr. Richmond's emphasis on seeking knowledge from a place of love comes in. It's about approaching our spiritual journey with a sense of curiosity, openness, not just blindly accepting everything we hear.
Right. It's about being an active participant in our own growth and discernment. This actually reminds me of another concept Dr. Richmond talks about, recognizing our supernatural substance. What exactly does he mean by that?
Yes. That's about recognizing the divine spark within ourselves, within everyone and everything, really. It's about seeing the world through that lens.
So it's less about us trying to become something we're not and more about recognizing that inherent divinity that already exists.
Exactly. It's a shift in perspective, from seeing ourselves as separate to recognizing our interconnectedness.
It's like we're all part of this web of creation, all connected by this invisible thread of the divine.
Beautifully put. And that brings us to another concept that might seem a little out of place at first glance: adultery.
Adultery. Okay, now I'm really curious. How does that fit in with all of this?
Right. It might seem a bit jarring at first, but like with many things in his book, Dr. Richmond encourages us to look beyond the surface. He's not just talking about physical infidelity here. He's actually using adultery as a metaphor for any time we betray our true selves, our connection to the divine.
Oh, I see. So it's about being faithful to our own visible spirit.
Exactly. It's about those moments when we stray from our own inner compass, our intuition, our values. It's about making choices that contradict our deepest truth, even if they seem easier or more appealing in the moment.
So spiritual adultery could look like ignoring our gut feeling, compromising our values, or maybe even just staying stuck in situations that no longer serve us.
Yes, yes, all of that. It's about recognizing that every choice we make, no matter how big or small, is an opportunity to either align with our visible spirit or to stray further from it.
It's a continuous process of checking in with ourselves, asking, is this decision, this action, this thought, is it in alignment with who I truly am at my core?
Exactly. It's about living in integrity with our own divine illumination, even when it's challenging.
And that can be tough. But it sounds like Dr. Richmond believes that this commitment to alignment is what ultimately leads to true fulfillment.
Oh, absolutely. And he actually uses this really interesting metaphor to illustrate this process of aligning with our visible spirit. He talks about donning our spiritual clothing.
Okay, I have to admit, that one has me a little stumped. What's with the wardrobe change?
Think of it this way. Imagine you've been wearing these old, worn-out clothes for years. They're comfortable, familiar, but they're also holding you back. They're raggedy, don't fit quite right, maybe even have a few holes.
I think we've all been there.
Right. Well, donning our spiritual clothing is like finally tossing those old rags and stepping into something new, something that reflects our true essence. It's about shedding those limiting beliefs, the self-doubt, the fear, what Dr. Richmond calls the old clothing of religiosity.
So it's about trading in those old limiting beliefs for a more expansive way of seeing ourselves and the world.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the righteous clothing of our own divine nature, stepping into the fullness of who we truly are.
So we're trading in those old, dusty beliefs for something way more aligned with our true nature. It's like a complete wardrobe overhaul for the soul.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Dr. Richmond's message is all about recognizing that inherent divinity within ourselves. It's about realizing that we're not just stuck with whatever baggage we've been carrying around. We have the power to choose differently.
And that choice, that shift in perspective, is what he calls donning our spiritual clothing. It's about stepping into an awareness of our true potential, our supernatural substance. And that makes me wonder, what could we accomplish if we truly embraced this power?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What would happen if we, lived each day, spoke each word from that place of divine illumination?
It's almost like, what would the world look like if everyone was walking around in their righteous clothing, so to speak?
Right. Imagine the compassion, the understanding, the connection. It would transform everything.
It's a beautiful vision, and I think it speaks to the heart of Dr. Richmond's message. He really seems to believe in our capacity for good, for love, for connection, even in the midst of all the chaos in the world.
He really does. And it's incredibly inspiring. Going
Yeah.
through his book, it's hard not to feel a sense of hope, a sense of possibility.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we're not just passive observers in our own lives or in the world around us. We have the power to choose, to create, to transform.
It all comes back to recognizing that visible spirit within, that connection to something so much bigger than ourselves. And when we tap into that, when we align with those divine principles, well, that's when the real magic happens.
It certainly seems that way. Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into mastering your supernaturalness, we want to leave you with this. What seemingly impossible things might you accomplish if you fully embraced your own supernatural potential?
What if you dared to step into the fullness of your own visible spirit, to truly don that righteous clothing of your true nature? What kind of worlds could we create together if we all embraced that power within?
It's something to ponder, to explore, and most importantly, to embody. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep shining your light.